And I think that there are, you guys were mentioning a little bit earlier, like these are our lives, right? We have to make meaning of them, and there are spaces that we create where we're not in prison, right? And I think that you guys did that so powerfully and in such an inspiring way with this book. And I hope that we continue to find ways to do that. I've recently started going into the federal prison here in Atlanta, which is like a whole new ball. I mean, some things are clearly they're the same because a prison is a prison. But when I started doing this, I was like, how am I going to take care of myself going? And a lot of people were asking me this because, it was new for me. I'd gone in to visit Lucy, really, that was it. But I realized that actually this is good for me because being able to go in and be a part of this community is like creating a space in the prison that is not of the prison. And I would just like to hear how you guys have been able to maintain relationships with the women who are still inside, how I know that it's hard because prisons make it hard and they surveil all communications and they tell us who can be in our communities and who we're supposed to be consorting with and all of that, to be on somebody's list, to talk to them. And so has it been hard for you guys to maintain those relationships and this working relationship that you had when you were inside?
Sure, in some ways. In other ways, Michelle, Rayanne, and Laura communicate with me through the portal, Connect Network portal. And Rayanne is on the board of my nonprofit. We do housing for formerly incarcerated women in Indianapolis. It's called Constructing Our Future. And Rayanne is a board member. And so her parents often help with communication between. For example, these bracelets, she made bracelets for all of our awardees at our fundraiser last night. And she got them out by sending them with the community outreach director staff who got permission to bring them to the fundraiser. And you're like, how did that work? That's trafficking in any other place. But Rayanne is on the board, and so it has a different meaning, a different flow. And so I stay in contact with them, and Michelle writes me as well. But it's hard, right? Because you're used to being sitting and having, significantly long conversations, not these, when Rayanne calls, she's the only person who can be on my phone list because only one phone number per person. So I can't have all the ladies call me, just one human being. And so Rayanne has to communicate love and care and best wishes and concern to everybody in the 20 minutes that, I get to talk to her. And that's frustrating for me. Super frustrating for me because you want to know what's going on with them. You want to be able to bring resources and support and care. And then when we were protesting the conditions of confinement and the heat and the lockdown during COVID-19, being able to talk to Rayanne was crucial because that's how I learned a lot about what was happening and how they were locking them down. So it's not perfect. It's not enough. And I've only been able to go in at Christmas time. I've gone in the last 2 years. Constructing Our Future is arranged to give hygienes out to the women. And so they allow me to go in. I don't really know why, but I got to go in and pass out hygienes at Christmas, and that's been dope. But I don't have a whole lot of access. But probably more than the average person would think you would get being formerly incarcerated from that prison for 20 years and you're going back in. I mean, I think it's amazing what you're doing, but I know it's not standard. I know it's not standard.
Well, that's another reason it's a federal, because that's probably why. I don't know if
there's some distance.
Yeah.
And Michelle's experience is different than mine. I am only in communication with one person inside, and that's Kimberly Baldwin, who was exiled out of IWP right in the middle of our project because she, much like myself, is a whistleblower. So she is the only member of the project that's at Rockville as opposed to IWP or now Madison Correctional Facility, and I stayed in touch with her. We were talking about trigger warning earlier. You just heard her say a term, post-traumatic prison disorder, also known as post-incarceration syndrome, and who knows what else.
Yeah.
This affects me horrifically. It is part of my new leaf of research now because it does affect me so much. And I battle. A piece of me would love to go inside and sit with men and women inside and have classes with them and teach them. There is a bigger side of me that, I'm not kidding myself, there is no fucking way I'm walking through that door that locks. I cannot handle it. If a cop drives by the street, I'm instantly, my anxiety is through the roof. And this really is part of my new research questions in this, because what I realize is that all of us have this carceral trauma who have been incarcerated. I don't care where we were, I don't care how long we were there, there's a red thread running through all of us with this trauma. But I'm looking for the nuances and the differences in this. And I'm questioning, are there some of us that maybe experience this worse than others? And what's the difference? What makes it worse for some of us? I can only speak and ascertain on my own experience. And I feel that for myself, it is so heightened because such horrific shit was done to me, in particular, in order to even get the conviction and the sentence they got to begin with. So yeah, it's a fine line. I mean, a piece of me, my heart cries and bleeds every day for the women that I left behind, some of which are literally doing life. That unless a miracle happens, they're never coming out. So it's painful not to see them, not to talk to them, not to be in communication with them. And it's a battle, you know. So I attempt to stay connected as a third party through other people that I know stay connected, you know, and it's always with the one person I speak to in Rockville. And I did do part of my sentence there. You know, I joke and say I did the tour. They sent me to every damn facility before it was over with.
You went to all of them.
I went to all of them. You know, but so I do know other women that are still inside Rockville that either were at Rockville the whole time or had been sent there from IWP or whatever. You know, it's just me trying to put the message through the women left behind however I can. Listen, please let them understand. It is not that I've forgotten them. It is not that I've turned my back. Like, I am battling my own shit and I just cannot function every day in life and still stay tied. But my message is always know that every fucking minute of my life is about fighting for those women. And I come and I tell the story over and over and over again, no matter how hard it is for me, because goddamn it, you're not going to keep doing this to my people. You're not going to keep doing this, you know. Women that I know in California when I started a PhD out there, that's another story, but some of those women were sterilized without their consent in modern times in that prison. We have not stopped doing this shit.
Right.
Incarceration itself, and you know, I believe it's the women in the later part of the book talking about, you know, the home for the feeble-minded and all these other things. Incarceration itself is eugenic, particularly for women. If you incarcerate a woman for every year of her reproductive life, you have essentially sterilized her by confinement. So, you know, even if you didn't rip my ovaries out, if you kept me in there for every year of my life that I was able to bear children, you have stolen that choice from me. You know, so we need to look at all these issues on a much deeper and much more complex level than what we currently do.
Yeah.
Incarceration itself is that.
Yeah, we were at the Schomburg, and a sister came up to me, and the sister who was Celine, who was talking about how angry she was having, you know, read a little bit about the book and what happened with the medicalization eugenics, and she talked about how nobody would believe her when she thought it was a pattern that she observed that so many young black women locked up in upstate New York were getting hysterectomies. Mm-hmm. And they said, oh, she's a conspiracy theorist. Oh, that ain't really happening. But she said she noticed so many times when she would go down to the infirmary and she'd say, what you in for? What you in for? What you in for? What you down here for? Over and over again, she would hear that these women were getting hysterectomies. And so what that book did for her was confirm her truth. But she felt believed by this book. And that's a work that has so much far-reaching implications so that women can grow in the knowledge, grow in the strength and the power that what they're seeing, what they're experiencing is real. Nobody would believe her. She said, something ain't right here. And she did her whole time, her whole bit, watching the pattern of Black women being sterilized over and over and over again, right? And so this is the work. And that's why we've moved from this project to another project that about little research, little understood aspects of incarceration, which is post-incarceration syndrome or post-traumatic prison disorder, because it's little bit understood the detrimental impact of having been incarcerated in some of these hellholes. Because you got the trauma that brings you to incarceration, but then living in that space is its own trauma. And then you have the nerve to say, just get out and get a job, make your life work. Like you haven't been going through a compressive system, just compressing you and breaking you for multiple years. And somehow you're just supposed to be like fixed, figure it out, right? That's why we do this work. We have legitimized ourselves because we said we were going to speak truth to power, and we're doing it. And now we said, okay, we're gonna mobilize our self-valuation to do this shit, to go to the next little known, understood area of research so that we can empower the next generation of men and women to speak up about what the crap is happening behind the wall, because that's what they don't want us to talk about. I mean, if you think about, there's only 3 external oversight mechanisms in the country that are nonpartisan, non-government, private entities that can go inside and inspect prisons and conditions of confinement in 50 states. And then after that, they only have recommendation power. Then that lets you know that the people, our bodies, the people are not valued in this system. We are completely disregarded. And so if we can go and say, look, there is a trail of trauma that we can document, provide you the evidence for, that you can now use this information, the boots on the ground, the community-based organizations, the lobbyists, the folks with the pickets and the signs to demand change. But you often need the support of the data. You need your facts. You got your experience, but you also need your facts. So we're coming with you with the next research project to bring you the facts. We got you the first prison in the United States for women and how they looked at us, how they viewed us, how we have been living that red thread of trauma ever since. And now we're going to take it to the next level to look at post-incarceration syndrome for formerly incarcerated men and women, because we need to make that change. And we need to be empowered to make that change. Like people like Celine need to be fucking believed when she sees patterns of Black women losing the right to give birth. So anyway,
Thank you so much.
Y'all see what it is.
Y'all
see.
Thank you for bringing up
what it
pics.
is.
And I think it's so important to get this book in the hands of the women I know who are still in prison, right? Because it's that connection and that validation that I feel like helps mitigate PICS while you're still experiencing, because it's not something that happens to you after you get out of prison, it's something that happens to you as soon as you come into contact with the system.
Yeah.
And the solidarity that comes from knowing, oh, it's not just me, oh, I'm not just crazy, or I'm not, just broken, right? This is a design, everybody is experiencing this, where we can build solidarity and validation instead of, this surveillance and this control and what happens, the opposite of solidarity that happens when prisons are involved.